Hello everyone, welcome back to Just Another F1 podcast here on Apex Motorsport. My name's Richard Smyth and this is episode 12. We've just had the historic British Grand Prix and I'm delighted to say today that I'm joined not by one guest but two. First up is the usual guest in the channel. It is of course our part-time Russian impressionist Ryan Caldwell. Ryan, thank you for joining me for this one. And joining both of us is an accredited Formula 1 photographer who brings out some fantastic work, and there's plenty to come soon with Goodwood and stuff the last few weeks. It is of course Craig Evans. Welcome both to the channel. I would say welcome, Ryan, you're always here, and Craig, you're part of the team as well, so thank you for joining me. We just had the British Grand Prix. We'll start off with you, Craig, just your immediate thoughts about the weekend in general.
I think it was actually a really good weekend. There was lots to talk about, of some of which we'll cover in the next ramblings as we go on. But yeah, I thought it was a really good weekend. I thought sprint race was an interesting topic to talk about. Whether it needs a bit of work or not, we'll go on to see. And then of course we have the big incident of the weekend, which was of course Alonso gaining 6 places in the sprint race. So
Yes, I don't know what all this hype is about this first lap championship deciding collision.
of course.
Yeah, it's all about the key moments of the race, but we'll get onto that one obviously. There's a lot to talk about, as you said, maybe too much to discuss all in just one episode. Ryan, your thoughts on the weekend?
Yeah, for the guy who pretty much missed most of it and had to watch highlights and replays, I did miss much of the hype, but I still understand what it was, still understand what went on, and I still think it was a really good weekend as well throughout all the practice sessions and the qualifying and also the sprint qualifying and the race.
Yeah, I do find it quite funny that 11 o'clock at night I was sitting in my hotel room and you hadn't actually watched the race at that point. You were waiting for the Channel 4 highlights at 11. I knew what happened, you didn't, and I thought I was trying my best not to tell you, and as soon as you texted me about the first lap incident, I was like, finally, I can finally discuss it with you. Craig, we'll start off with a bit of F1 higher or lower, our favourite part of the podcast. This, I think,
the best bit.
Yes.
Best bit.
Yes, so this is the highlight. I look forward to these every podcast. And as always, would you like me to ask you a question first, or do you want to ask me?
Oh, go on then, Richard. I think I'll let you ask your question first this week.
Well, you're being nice to me for a change. Okay. So Red Bull are calling for Lewis Hamilton to be handed a race ban, something that I'm sure we'll discuss in a little bit. But the last driver in Formula 1 to be given a race ban was Romain Grosjean after causing a huge crash at the start of the 2012 Belgian Grand Prix. That point is absolutely pointless as usual. His replacement though was Jerome D'Ambrosio, who took over for the 2012 Italian Grand Prix and finished in 13th place. There were 3 German drivers to finish ahead of him, but were there a higher or lower number of German drivers to finish behind Jerome D'Ambrosio in the race, not qualifying?
So it's 2012. I'm going to say you've got Schumacher, Vettel, and Hulkenberg. So would they finish behind? I'm going to go lower.
Okay.
Lower.
Final answer?
Final answer, yes.
You can change your mind if you want.
No, I'll stick with lower.
Okay.
I'll stick with my guns.
Well, there was actually a higher number of German drivers to finish behind them, so
Ah.
you're wrong. This completely ignored the fact that I misinterpreted the question the first time round. Yeah. So Michael Schumacher and Nico Rosberg finished ahead of him, and it was Timo Glock, Nico Hulkenberg, and Sebastian Vettel who finished behind them.
Vettel and Hulkenberg let me down.
Any guesses on why they had to retire? Hulkenberg and Vettel? Any guesses? Ryan, you can chip in as well.
Didn't they have a slight scuffle, didn't they?
Well, I'm basing this off Wikipedia, so it doesn't give me the exact facts, it just tells me what there is, so they could have done.
No, I'm not sure.
Well, Vettel retired on lap 47 with an alternator problem after starting 5th in the grid, and Nico Hulkenberg retired on lap 50 with a brakes issue. Which wasn't too bad given he finished in 21st when he started in 24th, so despite retiring he still improved his grid position.
There you go, you see. Every cloud.
Yeah. And Hamilton won that race, and on the podium was Sergio Perez. in the Sauber.
Interesting.
And the second greatest Formula 1 driver of all time after Pierre Gasly, Fernando Alonso, was in third with Ferrari.
Oh, now that's an argumentative statement right there.
Why?
Right there.
Don't be
Because
doubting Pierre
Alonso's
Gasly.
the GOAT, and we all know that.
Don't be doubting Pierre Gasly. He's fantastic. We all know that.
That one win overrides those 2 World Championships.
Absolutely.
Right, so my question to you now.
Oh, here we go. I forgot you had to ask me one. I'm getting nervous.
Yeah, well, you should be. So, obviously this weekend we saw Charles Leclerc lead 49 laps of the British Grand Prix and not go on to claim the win. So my question to you is, the last time a driver led the majority of the race was George Russell in the Sakir Grand Prix.
I was going to say Bahrain. You was going to be a Bahrain race.
Well, Sakir, Bahrain.
Yes.
It was called the Sakir Grand Prix because it was the outer circuit.
Yeah.
My question to you is, did he lead more or less laps than 49?
It was a very sort of short circuit, so, but did he, because he started second, Bottas was in pole. Oh, because when it happened, you got your question.
We're going to say more or less laps than 49.
You got your question wrong, so the pressure's off a little bit of this one, which is always good. Because of the how many laps there is in that race, I'm going to go for higher, so more laps led.
Are you going to have a guess at how many? No extra points, just pure pride on this one.
I'm trying to remember how many laps. It was like 77 or something, or was that Monaco?
It was in the 70s.
I'm going to go, how many? 49 for Leclerc.
Yep.
I'm going to go 50.
So your final answer is higher, yes?
Yes.
That would be correct.
Yes.
George Russell led 59 laps before Mercedes decided that he couldn't win his debut race for them. Yeah. Made that horrific error in the pit stops. There we go. One behind now. Pressure's on for next time.
Yep, and as always, these questions are getting more and more ridiculous and more far-fetched, and try to trick each other out as much as possible.
Of course.
Yeah. Ryan, have you got a question for either of us that you want to chip in with, or are you hiding, not wanting to get involved in the real drama of the podcast?
I think I'm just gonna take a back seat here and just enjoy my very short-term lived fantasy.
Yes. Jump out of the passenger seat into the driver's seat, because you're back in the podcast now for our F1 fantasy recap, and it hasn't gone too well for you, Ryan, has it? It
really has not.
Yeah, I have made a dramatic comeback, a Hamilton-esque comeback, and claimed top spot in the league, which I'm quite happy about. It's very close, Ryan. This is also the final week for the Hungarian Grand Prix. It's the final week of the mega drivers for the first half of the season. Who have you chosen to use, because you still had all 3 left, and is there any changes for your team going into the Hungarian Grand Prix?
Ultimately, I'm not going to make any changes, just due to the fact that some drivers have went up in price, and for me to take out drivers that I didn't want and put in better drivers, or ones I think would do better, it doesn't work. Apart from that, I think I'm just going to go with my strongest drivers as the mega drivers. So depending on how Verstappen's performing throughout the weekend, well, I suppose before qualifying or on the Saturday, he probably will most likely get the mega driver. And then obviously it'll depend on Bottas as well. I'm thinking I could take a chance with the third team, which isn't going to do well, but I think I could place a safe bet on Lando Norris to score some decent points and have that on turbo and mega, so it could work out well. I think that's what I'm going to go with if I do go ahead with that.
Yeah, for between our top 2 teams, there's a 47 point difference having the lead, so it is very tight. I obviously, my main team that's in the lead, have already used my mega driver. I used that on Hamilton at Monaco, and it did not go well at all. I for the Mega Drivers, for my second team and third team, I've gone for Sergio Perez and Lewis Hamilton in my World Champions team to see if I can try to get them moving up the leaderboard a bit more. I'm not really going to make any changes either. I'm happy enough for the way it is. Craig, would you recommend either of us to put a Mega Driver on Nikita Mazepin for Hungary, or do you think he's just going to be down the back of the grid scoring no points again?
I mean, weirder things have happened, but
True,
you never know. You never know, because Mazepin seems to have stopped spinning, which was a start, and he seems he's putting in some decent performances now. He's finishing ahead of Schumacher a couple more times. He did at the weekend.
Did he spin at Silverstone? Because I heard there's rumours in the grandstands about they spun, but it wasn't shown on TV.
I don't think it. Well, I haven't seen anything, so I'm not sure.
I'm just checking the infamous Mazepin website, and we did updates. It's apparently he did in Q1 and in the sprint race. I'm just watching these now.
Lovely.
Looks to be down at. He did spin. Down.
Ah, there we go then.
I'm trying to work out where this was though. I think it's. Oh, I don't actually know.
Copse, Luffield, Maggots and Beckett's. Where?
We spun. That's all we need to know.
Yes. And then he spun in Q1. Oh, he just completely lost it. And I think that's Copse Corner.
Alright, there you go then.
Yeah, it's not good at all.
Not an easy track, Silverstone.
No, it's not. And the track temperature, I think it was 51, 52 degrees some days because it was.
Yeah, it was very hot.
So warm. So that's the F1 higher and lower and the F1 fantasy out of the way, and I think, Craig, all I can say is overdue on the Hamilton Verstappen incident. We all know it could potentially lead to this new intense championship rivalry. There has been that so far this season, but I think this is the moment that we really just set the light and we'll get a real sort of 80s, 90s sort of style where two drivers are going head to head. But maybe a Hamilton Rosberg like, but I think the big difference here is they're not teammates, two different teams, two different cars, and two very different types of team principles. Craig, over to you in this one.
Yes. Yeah, it was an interesting one, wasn't it? Because I think it was at the start of this season when we were discussing Red Bull looking strong. I think I famously said, which you laughed at, that Max hasn't got it in him to. I said that Max hasn't got it in him to win a world championship. And it was exactly a moment like Silverstone, which I was referencing, because Max's main style is aggression. It's pure, I'm going to put the car here, and you're either going to get out of the way or I'm going to hit you. And to me, I mean, I'm obviously, as I say, I'm not a professional racing driver, and I probably never will be. But it was the thing. He had a 33-point lead at the championship.
Yeah, I think something like that.
And he's in the quicker car, he's in the better race car, and he just didn't give him room. If anything, the argument of Christian Horner, it was a desperate move. I think it's complete rubbish. And I think Christian Horner, and to an extent, Helmut Marko, but it's Helmut Marko. We all know he's a bit of a loony. I think Christian Horner should actually be pretty embarrassed about the way he reacted at the weekend, because to me, it was a racing incident. Lap 1, two drivers being hyper aggressive, and I think for the first time in Max's career, he lost a game of chicken. And I think that came from the sprint race with how aggressive he was. And Hamilton just thought, do you know what? Why am I going to get pushed off the track again? I'm going to fight this. And he did. And to me, the best analysis is Jolly and Palmer's analysis on YouTube. I recommend everyone that's listening go watch that, because that is a fantastic analysis. And he said it was a racing incident. It was 50-50. Lewis was a little wide. This whole he didn't hit the apex argument is rubbish, because that's never been a requirement for racing. He was a little wide, and Max came across. So to me, it was 50-50 racing incident that could go on to have pretty massive implications for the championship.
I think with the way Michael Massey sort of was saying when he took over from Charlie Whiting, it was, we're going to let them race in lap one. That's the excitement. The best drivers in the world, or at least 19 of the best drivers in the world, going head to head at the start of a Grand Prix. And for, I think, the last race where, I think it was it Perez that kept getting the penalties for pushing people off track, the 5-second penalties.
Yep.
I can see why you give the penalty for consistency reasons with other incidents, but it's not. It's a lap one of a British Grand Prix around one of the fastest corners. They're going around that 185 miles per hour, if not quicker, as if they're going to have time to sort of realize.
But that's the thing I don't get with the reaction on social media. Everyone's saying, "Oh, Lewis was never alongside," and I'm like, "But you're looking at your screenshot that you're using for evidence. He's not alongside. But if you go literally 2 frames back in the footage, you can see his front wing is level with Verstappen's front wheel. This is what I don't get. This whole argument of fan bases just attacking each other, and I don't get that, because we are watching probably one of the greatest drivers in the sport's history go absolute hammer and tong at each other. It's fantastic. It's great racing, but you're gonna have accidents.
The race judge obviously said it was a penalty, a 10-second penalty, and whether or not it deserved that, we'll get into that in a minute again. But do you think, given that they seen it was a penalty, do you think that the fact that it was Silverstone and Hamilton's home race, that they were a bit more lenient in the penalty, that it could have been, even longer? I don't know what more extreme penalties they could have brought in, but
well, after 10 seconds, it's a drive-through, isn't it?
Yeah, Mercedes.
So it's 5 seconds, 10 seconds, then drive-through, and then stop goes.
Yeah, Mercedes sort of made it into a stop-go penalty, but also not really, because they were able to do the pit stop at the same time. Do you think because it was Silverstone, they were a bit more lenient and let him off with only a 10-second penalty, regardless if you think it was a penalty or not?
I think a 10-second penalty was harsh for what happened. And I apologise for the proper arguments that are going to go on if there's in the comments, if there is any. But I think 10 seconds was harsh. I think the only reason they penalised him is because Max ended up in the barrier. Had he continued, there would not have been a penalty there at all, I think. I thought 10 seconds was harsh. I think, if anything, 5. And that's it. It's a racing. You can't penalise this kind of racing. Yes, it was a bad accident, but it's 50-50. You can't just slap a 10-second penalty on. And funnily enough, when I was watching it and I saw him get a 10-second penalty, I was like, well, Hamilton's going to win this now. He's going to be motivated to win this race. And lo and behold, a fantastic recovery drive to a win.
Yeah, I was sitting at Abbey, the inside of Abbey and on the track, and whenever I seen the incident, because the bike screen in front of us, and I think I've seen a lot of people complaining about it on social media, but I think just cleared up from what it was like at my end of the circuit. Soon as going around Copse Corner, the two collided and Max started spinning. That's all we seen before gravel and dust. You couldn't see anything on the TV. A cheer went up because Hamilton was in the lead of the race. His big title rival was out. As soon as we seen the impact against the barriers, the grandstands around me were silent, because they knew this was a big accident. And I think I just need to clear it up, because I've seen a lot of people complain about it on social media, and Verstappen himself saying it was disgraceful. The two drivers could have both crashed easily. Hamilton continued on, Leclerc got into the lead. I do think it's unfair the way people are saying that it was very disrespectful of the fans, because from where I was sitting, it wasn't. From the videos I've seen of the incident at Copse Corner, I think it's very similar, because there's a very mixed fan base. There's a lot of fans of Silverstone who aren't Lewis Hamilton fans. There's a lot who are Max Verstappen fans. The majority of fans there were Lando Norris fans. So I think it's pretty unfair.
Again, from what I've seen with that, there's a cheer when Verstappen spins, because obviously Lewis is taking. But as soon as people realise the impact of the crash, it stops straight away.
Yeah, and you're getting that from watching it on the TV live, and it is unfair.
Even from like social media clips as well.
Yeah, I think it's used to be the toxicity of social media that's putting blame on everyone, trying to get the Max Verstappen fan base, just get them annoyed and trying to target after the incident. Ryan, we haven't come to you yet. Racing incident, penalty, or do you think he deserves a race ban?
Ideally, when you do just look at the clip and you really focus on it, it's without a doubt it's a racing incident. It was 50-50. Even if you do see it in slow motion, Max is sort of reacting to Lewis's, I guess you could call it, slight understeer or oversteer, sorry, for taking the tighter line. But then he, instead of, whether he was trying to correct the car or something, he just seems to jump the steering wheel sharply to the right as Hamilton's alongside, instead of sort of keeping it straight and letting things pan out. So in a way, I see he caused it himself, and also Lewis. There wasn't much he could really do. There's people saying yes, there's a wee bit more room at the side, and he could have slowed down and backed out. But sure, that's what Max wants. He wants him to back out, and Lewis just took the fight to the dog, as they say. So racing incident, penalty should have been given. Once again, maybe 5 seconds. 10 seconds was quite a bit, especially if you're going after Charles Leclerc, who was absolutely a phenomenal drive that weekend. But yeah, that's really how I see this very touchy subject, as it seems to be.
Yeah, I think it would have
It's the point you made about... Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
It's the point you made about him with having the space on the inside. Yes, he didn't hit the apex, but not being funny, it's lap 1 of a 55 lap Grand Prix. You're 33 points in the lead of the championship. Cars are going to understeer on that first lap. Do you fight that as hard as he did? And let's not forget, Max had space on his side as well to get out of it.
I think the way Hamilton then went through overtakes on Norris and Leclerc at the same corner, and especially the way Leclerc ran out wide, Verstappen could have done that. If Verstappen had done that, it could have been a very simple call to switch around the cars, give Verstappen back the lead. If they thought he had the corner, he was in the lead going into the corner, that would have meant both drivers were still in the race. I think Red Bull and Christian Horner saying that Hamilton intentionally crashed out Verstappen. I do not agree with that at all. I think
that's pretty disgusting. That
I don't think Hamilton is the type. I don't think there's any driver on the grid that would intentionally crash out a driver on purpose, especially when you're going for a world championship. And if you get that wrong and your competitor goes off into the distance, you're 25 points behind further than what you already are.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely not.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think the red... Oh, sorry, go on, Ryan.
Oh no, work away.
Because I was going to say that the reaction from Red Bull and Christian Horner for me was completely unacceptable. Calling him desperate, you don't overtake there, all of that stuff, and the way they reacted to the stewards was completely unacceptable. You can't react like that in professional sport.
One thing that the whole incident did allow me to do is use some Spice Girl lyrics, as I all know Christian Horner is married to, I think it's Jerry Halliwell, one of the Spice Girls. I'm not sure which
Jerry
one.
Halliwell, yeah.
Which one was she? This is
Ginger Spice.
Okay. Surprised you know that, Brian. This is more Craig sort of era.
No.
In fairness, I had to ask my dad about what any Spice Girls songs were. He gave me the Two Become One, so I put out, this is what happens if you go side by side into Copse Corner, and then I did a little bit of research and found that that Spice Girls had a 1997 hit, Move Over, which Christian Horner could have signed to Max Verstappen going down into Copse Corner, but it was a little bit too late. I managed somehow to get them tweets up because mobile signal around Silverstone is difficult enough on a normal weekend, never mind a Grand Prix weekend. And I know a lot of the teams, especially Aston Martin and Mercedes, had a lot of banter between each other, chatting about emails and signal, and the email, of course, that Toto Wolff sent to Michael Massey. Craig, what do you think that email would have said? I know there's some sort of diagram of where the car was meant to be, but do you think it's right that teams can just send emails, or do you think Massey was right saying I don't respond to emails? But then again, he is working.
I think Massey has every right not to respond to emails during the race, and I think the stewards should be an independent group or an independent organisation that sorts out these calamities. But the diagram from Toto, I think, would have just been if a car is wide and cuts in, he's going to crash into the car that's tight, that's going to go wide. It's 2-into-1, and it's just not going to work.
Do you think that the comment that Christian Horner made, saying that team principals should not be allowed to contact the stewards, that the stewards should be locked away in an office, and then going and doing exactly that beforehand, do you think that that's something that should be taken into consideration, or is it just Christian Horner trying to sort of not cause any further drama down the line where the same thing happens again?
I think the comment I agree with, but it coming from Christian Horner, who was straight on the phone to the FIA, calling for Lewis to be black flagged or whatever, and saying how hyper dangerous it was. He can't say that and then expect to do it, and after he did it straight away. And not only that, you look at how Christian Horner's been speaking about the Mercedes in the press in the past. He's been the main one lobbying for change that's going to hurt Mercedes. Like, it's a bit of a catch-22 for him, to be honest. But I agree that the stewards should be independent. They shouldn't talk to drivers and teams during the event. It should be an investigation after, where they say, right, Team A, Team B, Team A, what happened, Team B, what happened, and then go from there. But if it needs deciding quickly, then that's why we have driver stewards. And I think it was Emmanuel Pirlo this weekend. So yeah, that's why we've got the driver stewards. But it's thrown up a whole kettle of fish really about how accidents and how penalties are dealt with during the race.
Do you think there needs to be more sort of driver stewards that are former Formula One drivers themselves? Because I know they bring in drivers from different series, but especially ones that have been driving these current era cars. I know this could change going into next season, but people like Nico Hulkenberg and Daniel Kvyat, do you think they should bring them sort of people in, that maybe ones that don't have connections to teams currently, but to give a modern sort of up-to-date thoughts on the incident using them cars and the capabilities of those cars and what they can and can't do?
I mean, that's definitely an interesting point to raise, because they'd obviously understand the situation more from within the driver's perspective. But again, you're getting into that area where you're going to have very differing. I mean, even Jenson Button, who raced until 2015, he said it was Hamilton's fault, which Karun Chandhok then completely disagreed with, and Jolyon Palmer disagreed with. But then this is the thing: it's a polarizing incident. Everyone's saying, well, it's his fault. It's his fault. Well, no, it's kind of a bit of both. So yeah, I think the point getting more recent drivers in could work, and I think that maybe should be something they consider. But the older drivers and the more experienced drivers who have got other series under their belts, it's all racing etiquette, which is why I think they're in there.
Ren, do you agree with that? And going back to the email point, do you think that there should be more communication between sort of the team principals and the race stewards, or completely scrap that altogether and leave the stewards to steward the race and the team principals to manage their own team?
You see, as far as I understand, it goes to Michael, and then he determines whether it needs to be investigated by the stewards further and stuff like that. I can't exactly remember. I was watching a video on it earlier, funny enough.
Pretty sure that's correct.
Yeah, something like that. But with them talking to Michael, like, say he's seen the incident, it's already been reported, and that's his part, then I think it's okay to open communication between the teams, as well as him continuing to analyse things that's going on in the race as it does. Because even when we started to get little snippets coming in from Toto or Christian within the race of different things to Mr. Michael Massey, you can check out that video on our channel as well. Yeah, I think that the communication is a good thing. It brings viewers an insight, not so much the fans at the paddock, but obviously people watching at home. It's bigger insight for us. But at the same time, you can't solely just have constant communication going to Michael Massey. He's got a very important job to do, and it's a job that he's so far has handled quite well. Stewards that it gets obviously sent to, sometimes things just aren't looked into as much, and as you were saying, maybe having a few more recent drivers in that panel could help put a different perspective on things, as they've now driven these cars. They know how they handle and what to expect. Obviously coming in next season, as you're saying, it's going to be a different spec of cars, so it makes that whole thing obsolete. But I think definitely having some other drivers more recent, maybe within the last 3-4 years, who have gone, even a long lost guy, Brendan Hartley. He didn't stay for long, did he? But even someone who's had an F1 experience for even a season, that understands how those cars work, could put a better insight into why the drivers did the things they did, and why penalties should be properly given, rather than just, oh well, I suppose we have to give it.
I feel like we sort of need to move on now, because we've chatted about this for quite a bit, but I think the final point in this, Red Bull have apparently hired lawyers. Now this has come from Helmut Marko, so we don't know how much truth is in this, because the Red Bull famously said that Pierre Gasly would be remaining with Red Bull before swiftly demoting him back to Toro Rosso. Craig, do you buy this whole hiring lawyers and wanting to increase Hamilton to potentially a race ban?
At the end of the day, the lawyers can't do anything. They don't have the authority. They can advise the FIA, but they don't have the authority to give Hamilton a race ban. And I think it's just a massive overreaction from Helmut Marko again. And I think that it's Red Bull showing that they don't really care about that second driver. They only really want that title for Max this year, and they will do anything to get it. I think it's completely useless, and it once again and then you look at, on a bit of a side note, you look at the reaction and the abuse Hamilton got on social media. Do you guys, obviously Ryan and Richard, do you guys think that Helmut Marko, Christian Horner, and the way Red Bull reacted, and especially the way Max Verstappen reacted on his Twitter, do you think they should be held? Do you think there's some element of responsibility there?
They should be setting the example for everyone else in Formula 1, the paddock, and for the young fans coming through. And the way Verstappen reacted was definitely not that. He can't go and stand before a race with his re-races 1 minute and then go, and you could get to the point where the way he was saying it could potentially be considered online bullying. The way things are, it could be, and the abuse that Hamilton got as well is unacceptable, and hopefully that's something that gets kicked out of Formula 1 and sport in general and society in general as soon as possible. But Red Bull overreacted massively, and I feel like most of it could have just been the heat of the moment. Their championship potentially one driver has crashed out and Hamilton has gone on to win, but they should be held accountable for they're threatening lawyers, they're threatening all this action, they're one Hamilton get a race ban. It's complete overreaction, and it's not needed. At the end of the day, it's a Formula 1 is a sport. It comes down to it's a sport.
Yeah, there are risks.
Yeah, there's one race. I'm not sure which driver who was it that clipped Grosjean in Bahrain. Were people holding?
I think Ericsson hit us.
Where no one was holding him.
Oh.
no one was holding him accountable for potentially almost killing Grosjean with the crash. And if you go back to the Formula 2 race in Spa a few years ago with Antoine Hubert, Juan Manuel Correa and all the drivers involved, there wasn't this serious action brought out, threats of lawsuits out against him, where Hamilton has gone down the inside, he's clipped the tyre, and because of the safety of these cars now, Verstappen was able to get up out of his car. The hospital thing, I think, was only a precautionary, because of the way the medical
Precautionary
centre
checks,
is. Yeah, but they're using that as a way of making it sound far worse. So yeah, it's a complete
I agree.
It's a complete overreaction, and if you flipped this round the other way and that was Verstappen going up the inside, I think Toto Wolff might have just slammed his fist in the desk and moved on to Hungary, focus on Bottas for the race, because I think Bottas, and we'll mention him in a minute, done a fantastic job that race playing the team game, and it would
agreed.
Have been his fist slammed the desk, focus on Bottas' race and get the Russell contract signed and move on to Hungary. Brian,
the biggest thing for me was the way Verstappen tweeted, "I don't like being taken out like that." Was that the word? Was that what he said exactly? I believe.
Did he not crash into Vettel 2019 Silverstone near the end of the race? Or was it the other way around? I know he definitely crashed into Vettel.
Very disappointed with being taken out like this. And that's just, you don't say that. It's a racing incident. You cannot just come out and point the blame straight away.
It's only because he likes to get taken out by ex-Formula 1 drivers' girlfriends.
Ooh. Zing.
And that's Apex cancelled.
But let's just throw it back a bit. I'm sorry, I know you want to move on, but it's really wound me up.
This is important, yeah. Craig's Corner, here we go.
Here we go. If we throw it back to Barcelona, the race, and a certain Dutchman diving up the inside of Lewis Hamilton, banging wheels, pushing him off the track. So he didn't make the apex, he ran wide, and he pushed Hamilton off the track. Christian Horner said, "That's vintage Verstappen. Nice to see it, lovely. It's a good," and I quote, "It's a good job Lewis backed out, otherwise he would have been in the wall." Where's the difference to what happened at Stowe at the weekend?
It's the same as Albon and I think Sainz last year's Silverstone. Very similar incident, but nothing was said about that. Albon was in the complete right because he was a Red Bull driver. I think
exactly.
I don't know if Christian Horner is trying to play, and Red Bull in general are trying to play some weird mind games for Mercedes, but we know what Toto Wolff and Hamilton and Bottas are like. They don't care. They'll go back to the motorhomes after the race and focus on themselves, and they'll turn up the next race with a better car, more motivation, and Hamilton will go on and win the race. That's what we've seen. Red Bull, I think, had too much momentum that they couldn't carry forward, and then they got the fear of not winning, and now think because one race Hamilton is now is won, he's cut the gap to 7 points, and they're fearing Mercedes again, where they had the upper hand and they didn't know how to deal with that because it's been a long time since they were the number one team in the sport, in quotation marks.
As a leeway onto talking about the rest of the race, and I think the way Red Bull reacted with Perez showed everything about their priorities for this year. Perez had a pretty naff strategy until about 10 to go, but he was in the points. For them to pit Perez, throw him way out of the points, just to take one fastest lap point away from Lewis Hamilton, which Perez did get, but he wasn't in the top 10. They threw away 3 possible points to take 1 point off Hamilton. And if that doesn't tell you that they really don't care about the constructors, nothing will. They want Max to win the drivers. They don't want the constructors. That was very clear that weekend, because Perez could have scored at least 5 or 6 points, but they weren't interested, and I think that was pretty bad because they loyally did Perez in this weekend.
Red Bull
not
have
to stir
always.
the pot. Oh,
Yeah, go
but
ahead,
he
Ryan.
might. What if he has a get out clause that if he doesn't win a world championship within a certain amount of years, he gets a free choice where he wants to go to next. And
Who,
that's why they're
Max?
so focused. Yeah, and that's why they're so focused on him.
But where would he go?
He's not going to Mercedes after this weekend. I don't think they'll want him.
No,
They're not going
and
to
he's not going to Ferrari either.
Yeah, but we don't know how 2022 is going to pan out.
That's a very good point, actually.
Verstappen.
You
to
might be
Williams,
right.
Here we go.
No, that's actually a very good point, Ryan. Very good point indeed.
Best thing to happen since.
But
I don't know.
Yeah, Ryan making a good point is very rare.
It's the questioning of how much are Red Bull throwing at this drivers' championship. Are they sacrificing next year's car? I mean, if that engine, apparently Red Bull said the engine in Verstappen's car is salvageable. How? I don't know.
It's not. It went past.
But if
I had under track access for the Sunday for the race, and I was sitting, as I said, at the grandstand inside of Abbey, and Hit come behind me, and Hit was in pieces. They had the green cover over it, but the front wing and everything, and the rear of the car, there was bits everywhere along the trailer. It was in pieces, and from the pictures, there's absolutely no way they'll be able to salvage that. And if they do, if they can get that fixed, it would be better than where was it? Was it Hungary last year when they had to fix the car in minutes before the race? I think that would be an even better success story for them, because if they have to put a new engine in that, which I think they will, potentially new gearbox and everything, I think that car is a complete write-off.
100%. I think that's a write-off.
That's going to come out of their cost cap or their budget cap. But what I did find interesting, and I'm going to get your thoughts on this, is during the sprint qualifying race, they retired Perez. Apparently, and I'm only saying that this is rumoured, that they got an extra 100,000 for the compensation package because of that. So,
because of a retirement.
Apparently so. Now this is only rumours. I've only seen this online that because of the compensation package, if there's damage to a car or they have to retire for certain reasons, they get so much money extra. It's because they're having to use the cars are more risk being in another race and stuff. So I don't know if that's true. If it is, I think Red Bull may have found a little bit of a loophole here that they'll need stop before they do it in Italy, but they now have.
But you've got to remember though, is they spent all their tokens going into Baku with that upgraded power unit, which was allegedly just to improve reliability. They have no engine tokens left, so surely they're going to take penalties come the end of the year.
Yeah, they're definitely going to have to, and that is because the way the grid is set up this year, going from 20th to 1st isn't as easy as it was 2-3 years ago. So it will be interesting. Ryan, any final thoughts on the Hamilton Verstappen incident before we move on into more Lewis Hamilton talk?
I just want to note that we've been talking about this one subject for over half an hour.
Yeah.
If not longer.
I could quite easily talk about it for another half an hour.
Yeah.
This should just be titled The Max versus Lewis Podcast. Just boom, there we go.
Well, it's a change from talking about George Russell getting the Mercedes seat every podcast.
Well, that is very true, yes.
Which we're going to talk about in a little bit. No, I don't think we will this week.
Maybe.
Yeah. So yeah, that was turn 9. We've chatted for half an hour. We've only got to turn 9 in the race in lap 1. We know that incident brought out the red flag, and interesting enough, when the safety car come out, we seen Bottas being told to go alongside Hamilton to check if there's any damage, and then the red flag come out. Leclerc was in the lead. He got the start for the race again. The second race. Can we technically say that Silverstone had 2 sprint races this weekend? Because we had that. Well, where was the last?
Yeah, you could do.
Where was the last race? My head's gone.
Austria.
Didn't they have, or where was the race earlier in the season that had a 3-lap shootout at the end?
Baku.
So they
4 laps.
Yeah. So Silverstone had a 1.5 lap sprint race with only 10, 11 corners before safety car come out. So the Silverstone breaking new records all over the place this weekend. Under the red flag conditions, we've seen Lewis Hamilton being able to have his car fixed. Craig, is this something that you think teams should be allowed to do? Because we know the Mercedes come out and said that if they didn't fix the car under red flag conditions, they were going to have to retire the car. Do you think that's something that they would be allowed to do, or just stop that and you can only make changes to a car under green flag and, well, let racing action under green, yellow flags?
I personally can't see a problem with it. If the car needs repair, if the car's been involved in an accident and it needs repairing, then why not? We pay money to watch 20 drivers. Why do we want to watch a field of 18 go round? And I know this is gonna, it's a Hamilton fanboy, but at the end of the day, all Hamilton had after that impact was a cracked wheel rim. That was it. That could have easily been fixed in a pit stop. It's not. If he came in with one wheel, absolute debris everywhere, car smashed to pieces, and they repaired it, then yeah, you're getting a little bit silly. But are we really going to moan about one cracked wheel rim? Like, is that? I don't see a problem with repairing under red flags because everyone can do it.
Yeah, I think that's what's fair. Is everyone can do it. It's different with, you know, a safety car coming out that you have to be in the right place at the right time to get full advantage of that. Under red flag, you're going to have easy 25-30 minutes before racing gets underway to make changes. You're still under parc fermé conditions, as far as I know. There's still limited changes. I think they probably made that under safety. I know they're allowed to change the tyres, and we've seen it was a Stroll when Gasly won the race last season. He gained the advantage from that. He didn't have to pit. That's the sort of luck you need in Formula 1, and that's the luck that will win you a world championship. And you know, it might be a point that we'll talk about at the end of the season that, you know, maybe it's not that crash, but it's the fact that Hamilton was able to stay out and fix the car because of that under these red flag conditions that won him his 8th world title, which Christian Horner did slip up at and say during one of his interviews, which
I did notice that. Yes. It's quite funny.
Yes, it was, and I feel like people need to be correcting him on that. I'm sure he probably meant 8-time Silverstone or British Grand Prix winner, but you never know. Ryan, your thoughts?
But it was, to me. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
The red flag thing. It's, you can check. You can't, if you come in with a broken front wing, you can't just whack on a brand new front wing. You have to replace like for like. So if you come in and you've got, say, a broken barge board, you can't then put a brand new barge board on that car. It has to be a barge board that weighs the same and looks the same. You can't upgrade parts during the race. It's a like for like swap. That's what I think a lot of people don't realise. And a lot of people, I think, especially with the Hamilton Verstappen incident, are saying, oh, he wouldn't have finished had it not been for the red flag. I mean, yes, he would have done, because it was just a cracked wheel rim. That was it. He would have pitted. They'd have changed it. Whether he'd have won the race, probably not. Or we don't know. He might have done. You never know. But the whole argument of you shouldn't be allowed to change under a red flag, and let's not forget, Max Verstappen's benefited from changing parts under a red flag before. It's not really, you can't just pop up and say, well, it's benefited the driver I don't like, so I want it banned. That's not how it works. Everyone can do it. And ultimately, it is a safety thing. You can't have cars going out with carbon fibre hanging off everywhere. I think we all want to watch F1 and we all want to see 20 cars. So let's see 20 cars. Let's not see a car retire after a red flag because they couldn't replace the parts.
Yeah, you made some good points there. I think if it got to the point where they were able to change, you said upgrade parts or change the parts that are different, if it's a dry, wet race, whatever, they have to put the cars, that's when it starts to get abused. But luckily with like for like parts, it won't be abused like that. Ryan, your thoughts on the whole red flag thing? Should teams be allowed to make changes or not?
I definitely think there should be some aspects of it. Obviously, as Craig was saying, it's replaced like for like. It's not as if they're going to be upgrading parts or changing they're changing the front wing possibly if there's damage, but they're not actually changing the style or the spec of the front wing. It's the same thing, and even still in pit stops, who's to say that when they're changing the aero angle or whatever it is of the wing, that's not any different.
Yeah, it's one of these things that I think the point you said, Craig, that if it's your favourite driver and they've benefited from it, you love it, and if it's a driver you don't like, you're going to complain. And I think that's the same about the crash as well. And at least, we can sit here going that, well, Hamilton got a 10-second penalty, but he still won the race, and it's not the fact that he lost the race over a penalty. I think that's, he won the race based on everything that the stewards awarded him. Whether or not Red Bull get anything down the line, we'll have to wait and see for that one. But a driver who is not Leclerc, or I said it is Leclerc, not I meant to say not Hamilton Verstappen. It is Charles Leclerc. What a fantastic weekend he had. He led the majority of the race, if not all but one lap after the restart. He had a few issues with the car. I think at one point he wasn't allowed to go into F gear. Ryan, what did you make of Leclerc's weekend? Were you impressed with him, and were you disappointed for him that he wasn't able to hang on to claim the race victory?
Definitely after the restart, he really got off and he held it. He held that race. Ferrari surprisingly didn't look like clowns this weekend. They actually had a pretty decent performance, which is quite unusual for them, especially around a circuit like a normal track circuit compared to the street circuits. They were very advantageous. Oh, very big word there from me. Ferrari. Yeah, Charles, he's gonna be one of the great drivers amongst this new generation coming through, with your Lando, your Russell, your Leclerc, maybe Stroll. We're not sure yet. Daddy's cash. He is very nice. What was I gonna say? Yes. Up until that point, we knew Lewis was catching quite fast, and even when he did manage to get past him, Charles, he did put up a wee bit of a fight, but not as much as he probably could have. He ran wide and just essentially says, right, I'm scared, I'm going to go away, you're going to go through, and we're just going to let this happen. And then he was paranoid with himself then after, he almost had it. Well, you didn't almost have it, you got scared. That's what happened.
I don't think he got scared. I think it's the fact that Ferrari had no plan of being there. They completely outperformed that car. And let's not forget, Ferrari in France, they were god awful. They couldn't get the mediums to work at all, or the hards. Yet in Silverstone, it works. And I think the whole overtake on Leclerc would have stayed on the track. He just got a bit of oversteer off the curb, which caused him to twitch. But I think, yeah, that was a bit of a teasing a donkey with the carrot and then yoinking it away as it goes to bite it at Silverstone. But I think Ferrari will celebrate that second as a win. They were pretty chuffed with that.
Yeah, it was definitely a happy weekend for Ferrari, and Leclerc hasn't got the best success of leading the majority of the race and then losing it near the end. Bahrain second race in Formula 1 was very, very similar. I'm really disappointed for Leclerc not to take that victory because he was very impressive. I remember saying, I think it was either Friday or Saturday to my dad, that when we're chatting about future world champions, we're chatting about Lando Norris, George Russell, and Charles Leclerc. Although we've mentioned previously that we think that would be a future world champion, his name doesn't come into that conversation as much now, and I think that's down to Ferrari underperforming. But he's brought himself right back into that conversation because he outperformed that that car this weekend. And you know, if Hamilton didn't get that 10-second penalty served in the pit stop, we would be going. It's a good weekend for Leclerc, second, 40 seconds behind Hamilton. It was. We would probably say yes, it was a good drive. Craig, do you agree with that, or the fact that a second place, 40 seconds behind Hamilton would still be a good weekend for Ferrari, given that were their struggles the past few seasons?
Yeah, I feel it's a great result for them, and I think an interesting point you made about his name not appearing so much in that future world champion list. Do you reckon that's because of Carlos Sainz?
Potentially, yes, because Sainz, feel like, has up to this race was the better of the two drivers this season. I feel like it was, if probably 60-40 towards Sainz, and I think potentially what's tipping that is the fact that for me, despite what he done for McLaren, Sainz never comes into my head as, oh, you're a potential race winner, you're going to want to do big things. I think that's his previous struggles with Renault and stuff. I think that's what's affected that. But yeah, Sainz has been very, very impressive. But Leclerc has now set a mark that Sainz has to meet, because I think it was clear who still the number one of Ferrari is. It's Leclerc. He wants to be their future world champion. I think given he drove the 1951 Ferrari for a couple of demonstrations lap over Sainz, shows Ferrari are still thinking Leclerc is going to be their number one driver. But yeah, I think Sainz has had a big effect on the conversation of future world champions. Brian?
I think to me, Sainz and Lando are the two drivers of the season.
Oh, yes, definitely. Given the struggles that Ferrari had last year, we all said last season that Sainz, he will feel like he's regretting the move, and he could be, because we've seen McLaren be right up there, but he now knows that Ferrari on certain tracks can perform, and it might just give him the motivation to try push a little bit harder and try to close that gap between him and Leclerc that was at Silverstone, which wasn't massive. Leclerc got a good advantage from the lap one incident, got into the lead, benefited then from the restart, and yeah, but Norris as well, he said, has been superb. For the first time, Silverstone, this is my third race there. It's the first time that I've seen more fans of another driver than Hamilton. The amount of orange caps around Silverstone was incredible. The stalls where they're selling the merchandise had up no more Lando Norris t-shirts, no more Lando Norris caps, which I think shows that he's got the British fan base, he's got the Silverstone fan base, and given the main stage during the Anne-Marie gig on Saturday night, she's been interrupted by chants of Lando, which is incredible. And with George, I think, and we're going slightly off topic here, but it's exciting future for British motorsport when eventually Hamilton moves on. Ryan, to pick up on Craig's question there on Norris and Sainz being driver of the season, do you agree with that, or has there been someone else who has really surprised you this season?
There really hasn't. Lando, he's taken that McLaren and he's upstaged himself compared to Daniel. Now, we thought Daniel was maybe, going to take 3, 4, 5 races at the most to get comfortable with that car and really start pushing results. He is starting to show a bit of performance now, but Lando's just miles ahead. He's consistent every single weekend, points all the time. He's been in the top 3 now more times than he was in his entire last 2 years. He's definitely doing something right. And with Carlos, he was his teammate. It's as if they've stayed together just by being good. And Carlos is definitely maximising that Ferrari more than Charles. It's just Charles gets into better race positions and race situations where it allows him to just keep going, and that's where Carlos is struggling. He's struggling with the midfield battle instead of getting lucky, being out front and managing to defend it and hold it off, which is what Charles is actually surprisingly better at. Charles is still better at defending than Carlos is attacking. But Lando and Carlos, I would nearly back that up with what Craig was saying and say they've probably been the two most impressive drivers so far. It's definitely not Nikita Mazepin. We all know that for a fact. But in saying that, someone who's had a very, stable, solid drive, but never seems to be mentioned anymore. Mick Schumacher, yes, he's in the slowest car of this, current year, but he's consistent. It's not like he's making any real big mistakes compared to some other drivers. I keep forgetting about Mick. He's just sort of like a wee quiet figure in the shadows. You just forget about him. A bit like Sonoda too, I suppose. Well, until he starts swearing on the radios. But no, I think it's definitely Carlos and Lando.
I think to pick up on your point, saying it's definitely not Nikita Mazepin. I just want to give a shout out to two people that are sitting in front of me during pre-practice 2 on Saturday morning or Saturday afternoon, who applauded Nikita Mazepin every single time he got round the corner. They were so sarcastic, but it was brilliant to see. Without fail, every time he come past us, the round of applause, and they knew coming down through Mags and Beckett if that was Schumacher or Mazepin. So fair play to them, because it was very difficult to see the difference between the Mercedes drivers. You couldn't see the numbers. You were going off the camera above with Bottas having the yellow one. And I'm trying to think who else driver numbers you couldn't see. There was another team that was impossible to see. Can't remember exactly.
Would it have been Alpine? No.
No, they were fine. Running through my head the entire grid.
Alfa Romeo.
You know what? Could have been them. It was Alpha Tauri as well.
I just said Alfa Romeo.
Yeah, I think it was Alfa Romeo. It was another team anyway that you couldn't tell the difference between them because the numbers just blended in. That's us going off topic yet again. I feel like we need to start wrapping this up. There's so much we haven't talked about. Sebastian Vettel cleaning up the grandstands after the race. That was great to see, and I think it's part of a.
Good boy, Vettel.
I think it's part of a documentary that he's filming. I know he went to a recycling plant the day after. So yeah, hopefully that'll be something that'll be worth watching when it does come out. But it's great to see, even if it was for documentary. It's still great to see, and he's backing up what he's promoting on the We Races One campaign, so the t-shirts and stuff. So it is great to see. We haven't even
after England cleaned up Germany, he's still gonna clean up England.
Yeah.
Oh.
Right.
Go, we are ticking the boxes
Yes.
on this one.
Yep. We haven't even talked about sprint qualifying, which going into the podcast before the Grand Prix, I thought this is going to be the main topic. I feel like this needs a separate video on its own, and it's something that we'll hopefully have a few within the next week or so, maybe even a few days. And the future of Formula 1, the new 2022 cars have been revealed. We haven't even talked about that. They were on display at Silverstone. They done a launch at Silverstone. This will be interesting because you two have only seen them, online visually. I've seen the mock-up version in real life. In real life, it looks really good, and I think it's because it doesn't have these weird rainbow sort of, the way the lighting works. It just looks weird on the computer, on your phone. Do you, both of you very quickly, do you like the look of these cars? I know they'll be completely different when the teams get their hands on the regulations, but based on the model that was presented, do you think seeing 20 of them in the grid will be exciting to see?
Yeah, I think it looks fantastic, and I think the point you made about it not translating well to photos was that livery they put on that model car to show everyone is an absolute photographer's nightmare, because you can't see definitive lines. It reflects the light at all different weird angles. That's why it looks a bit weird, you could say, on photos. But to me, the key thing was, I'm going to go to a whole different series here. Formula E. When they announced the Gen 2 car, that is coming to us next year, I believe, you look at that and you think, wow, that is a race car. It looks fantastic. I'm sure it'll go like a bat out of hell. It looks quick. It looks cool. It looks like something you'd have a poster of in your bedroom, on your bedroom wall. To me, F1 hasn't looked like that for, I say, probably 2008. I think the 2008 cars looked fantastic. They look great. And then we'll ignore the bit in 2015 where they put all of those phalluses on the front. We'll ignore that bit completely. But I think for the first time in a long time, F1 cars look exciting. They look exciting. They look modern. They just look great. I can't wait to see them on track next year.
Yeah, I think the livery they put on the car. Do you think that was? I think that was intentional to sort of stop the team seeing what
100%.
the FA think. But Ryan, very quickly, do you like the design, or do you think you could come up with something better yourself?
Well, I'm not a graphic designer, so I don't think I could have come up with something better. But I do. Whenever I think it was so far Mercedes and Aston Martin maybe, and also was it McLaren? They've posted people's renders of it, of what their current livery would look like on the car, and I have to say it does look a lot better with their own liveries, put on that car. It's not entirely a big fan of these wheel caps. Yes, I get what it does.
I agree.
I'm not a fan. Like when you see them in the testing photos, I think it was today for Aston Martin, was it yesterday Aston Martin? Today was Haas running the 18-inch alloys. They didn't have the wheel caps, and just seeing the actual alloys as they are, it looks so much nicer.
I completely agree with you, Ryan.
I think this is a conversation that can definitely be translated into a standalone video down the line when we get a little bit more information out and going into the season in general. We have gone on quite a bit in this podcast, so I think it's time to wrap up with some predictions for the final race of the first half of the season. I don't even know if it's an exact halfway point with the amount of cancellations and postponements we've had and will potentially have going forward. This is the first podcast that both of you have been on, and usually it's only one of you, so you do predictions on behalf of each other. I'm going to let you both make predictions for this race, and we can fight it out at the end of the season if you somehow win based on the points you got here. Will not be too competitive. I don't think will not be Hamilton Verstappen. The Copse will be Hamilton Verstappen turn 1, turn 2. Wasn't too much action there. Craig?
Yeah, it's a slight bit of wheel banging, that's all.
Yeah, well, we have to be a little bit competitive. It can't be all friendly.
Of course, you've got to have a bit. So it's also a little bit competitive.
Yeah, and by a little bit competitive, I mean this is going to be absolute season defining, and we're going to bragging rights for the rest of our lives.
Oh, severe bragging rights.
Yes, indeed. Craig, pole position. Who do you reckon is going to get that?
Lewis Hamilton.
Okay, we have.
It's the Hungarian.
Yeah, we have proper qualifying this weekend as well. Just one sentence answer, Craig. Did you think sprint qualifying worked in terms of having qualifying Friday and the race Saturday, or do you think there's a lot of changes needed? Just very, very quickly. I know it's going to be very difficult.
Very quickly. Yes, qualifying on Friday worked fantastically. The rest needs a bit of a tweak.
Okay, yeah, I think that the sprint race took away from sort of Friday qualifying, but Friday qualifying was fantastic. I really like that. Ryan, pole position?
Pole position, Valtteri Bottas.
Ooh. Odd sort of choice. Ryan, same question to you. Very quickly, sprint qualifying, good or bad?
It's okay, I didn't mind it. I think there's definitely room for improvement if they were to make it something more frequent. But we'll just have to see how it goes in Italy, isn't it? The next time it's out.
Yes. Yeah.
We'll see.
Yes.
Well, I'm gonna go for Max Verstappen then, because I think he'll be fired up. That's if he is fit to race. I think he has been cleared and he hasn't got any sort of major injuries. There's only minor bruising and stuff, is from what I've heard. So if he is fit to race, and I think I know we complained earlier about the whole incident, but I think it is great to see that he got out of that incident relatively unhurt. He was a little bit shaken up, but that's understandable. The 51G crash. and it's great to see him be released from hospital, and hopefully, he will be in the car in Hungary, because we need this championship battle, because it is going to get very spicy from here. So I'm putting Max Verstappen as the fastest qualifier. We're not going to call him, was it Speed King? But they called the sprint qualifying, showing F1's wee races won in its full flow by genderizing the fastest qualifier. We go to the race, and I'll start with this one, and I'm gonna go Lando Norris, because Verstappen's going to intentionally crash Hamilton out. Ryan, race winner.
I think Hamilton's going to come back and claw it.
Hamilton, okay. And Craig?
I'm going to go Hamilton.
Okay, so very mixed bag there, all three for Hamilton. The next one is the podium. This is where it can get a little bit interesting, and where I think most of the points are sort of won and lost. Craig, you can go first for this one. Who do you think will be joining Lewis Hamilton on the podium?
So I reckon it'll be Lewis Hamilton, Valtteri Bottas, Sergio Perez.
Lewis Hamilton, Valtteri Bottas, and Sergio Perez. Is that
correct? Yeah,
okay.
That's what I'm going to go for.
Ryan?
I think it's going to be Lewis Hamilton, Max Verstappen, then Lando Norris. I don't think Bottas will be able to hold it.
Okay, I'm going to go for Lewis Hamilton, Lando Norris, Daniel Ricciardo.
Oh, that is a brave one.
It is, but I think Ricciardo finishing as a fifth at Silverstone we haven't even mentioned that. That was very, very impressive. Fastest lap then. Ryan, who do you reckon is going to get the fastest lap?
Verstappen.
Okay. I'm going to go for Sergio Perez. They're going to strip Hamilton off the point again. And Craig, who do you think got the fastest lap?
I'm going to go with Charles Leclerc.
Okay. Interesting.
Very outlandish predictions here.
And now this is where it depends whether or not you remembered earlier that there is predictions or not with the wild card shout. Ryan, you always like to do a little bit of research, so what is your wild card prediction? You know the job by now. It's driver in a specific position. I can never say that word. In a certain position, that's better. That's not usually there, or just any other random stat. And we also need your traditional Nikita Mazepin's. We'll do that as we sign off the podcast, of course. So yeah, Ryan, your wild card prediction?
Lance Stroll.
Okay, interesting already.
Within the top 7.
Top 7, okay. I'll give you that as a wild card shout.
Yes.
Give you that. Craig, your wild card prediction?
Max Verstappen DNFing.
Okay, and we'll give you a point for that, but any specific reason?
I just have a funny feeling that it's going to get very punchy in Hungary, and
Okay.
Lewis kind of knows how to deal with that.
I'm going to go that... Have I... No, I haven't put Verstappen on the podium, that's good. I'm going to go that Bottas and Verstappen have a bit of a scrap. Because I think Bottas looks like he's playing the team game more. So potentially he could be a little bit of a roadblock. Yeah. And I think Verstappen will go up at the inside of a corner and clip Bottas's wheel, and both of them will go spinning off and into the barriers as a repeat of Silverstone. Should be an exciting race. It's 2 weeks, isn't it? Until Hungary.
Not next week. Not weekend coming. Weekend after.
And that's of course it's not the next round of the British GT Championship. The next race is this weekend in Spa, Belgium. Fortunately, I'll not be there covering it because of the current quarantine rules and stuff in the UK and in Belgium, and I know they had a lot of flood damage as well recently, so hopefully everything will go okay for them. But the next round in the UK is at Snetterton. I'll be there. Hopefully, Craig, you'll be there as well. Fingers crossed for that. So yeah,
Fingers crossed are indeed for that.
Yep. So coverage will be across the social media. We're hopefully going to try a few new things as well. Bit of trial and error because at the end of the day, me and Craig are both journalism students at university, so we do like to try new things that we're learning as well. So yeah, any final thoughts, Craig, on British Grand Prix and going into the Hungarian Grand Prix in 2 weeks' time?
I had a feeling going into the British Grand Prix that something was going to happen that was going to motivate Hamilton for the rest of the season. And that form that he showed in that race says it all, really. I think it is game on for the rest of the season.
And Ryan, you want to end on your traditional way of going out to the podcast?
Yes, I shall. Anything to note about the British Grand Prix? Not really. Anything to note about the next Grand Prix? Mazepin no spin.
You have it. There we go. Craig, how many Mazepins do you reckon will happen?
Oh, I'm going to say 2.
Okay.
One of which will be at the fast turn 4.
Ooh. See, Ryan, every podcast has said no Mazepin, so he's going to get it right eventually. And it's always happens.
In like 2034.
If he's in the sport at that stage, I hope he's
he'll be in a wheelchair and he'll still be spinning.
True. Yeah. There has been only 2 races which he hasn't spun this season. One of which is, ironically, Monaco. And probably because it's not wide enough for him to actually spin. And Austria. And Ryan, I think they're the 2 podcasts that you weren't actually on, so or the two before you weren't on, so it's quite unfortunate that the time you're not on the podcast it doesn't actually spin. But yeah, we have gone on way too long. I think this is probably going to be the longest podcast ever, but there was so much to talk about, and it was great to have both Craig and Ryan on the channel. And of course, Craig, you have a lot of photography work, and you have your Goodwood stuff coming out fairly soon, hopefully. All the links to that will be in the description below. Craig, just very briefly, just tell me about your experience of Goodwood and what it was like being there at a UK test event as a photographer.
Oh, it was absolutely fantastic. I mean, I've never done Goodwood as media before, but there was the bit that absolutely put the cherry on the cake for me was there was a red flag during one of the F1 sessions, and Damon Hill, Jackie Stewart, Marino Franchitti had all come up the hill. I was in the top paddock, and we did some photos, took some photos of everyone, and then we were just sat there chatting. Like, I had to pinch myself. I was like, Damon Hill, Jackie Stewart, Marino Franchitti. And we were just talking about James Hunt and his chickens. It was lovely.
And that's the type of conversations you have at Goodwood. It's very interesting.
Yes, it is indeed.
Yes, I was obviously at Silverstone. Craig, you were very unfortunate not to be credited, and to whoever is deciding the accreditation, you made a very big mistake there on that, I must say. And yeah, it was a brilliant event as well. It was great to be back at a full capacity crowd, and obviously you go to these events, there's risks and all involved in a way, but with restrictions eased in England, Craig, your restriction 3 so much, me and Ryan have to wait another few days here in Northern Ireland for that, but yeah, it was great to be back to some sense of normality. So yeah, hopefully as things goes on, more motorsport events open up, we'll be able to get out to a lot more and cover a lot more motorsport, because it is motorsport season now. But I feel like I need to stop rambling on. This has been brilliant chat. Thank you again, Craig, Brian, for joining me, and to everyone listening back home, thank you for tuning in once again. And if you haven't made it this far, thank you. Your support has been fantastic. The podcast has come on really well the last few episodes. Yeah, thank you to everyone for your support, and we hope you join us all for the next one.
Goodbye. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
No spin.